like it was enjoying it just as much as the casual observer. The old fisherman's gaze wandered up towards the wooded slopes surrounding the little town, and then on towards the walls ringing the old town, which had once been an Etruscan harbour. Not that the old fisherman knew anything about that. But what he did know, as he let the pine-scented sea air fill his lungs, was that Castiglione della Pescaia was his home, and that he was happy there. He also knew that today he had been surprised for the first time in a long, long while. It had all started relatively harmlessly. With his slightly darkened vision, he had spotted a blue and white parasol in the middle of the beach, on which the majority of sun worshippers were lapping up the spring sunshine with as little protection as they could. But under the parasol, 3 children of different ages had been sitting, each of them chalk white, their bodies as pale as their hair. Another had appeared and sat down beneath it, followed by a woman holding another small child by the hand. 6 utterly chalk-white people were cramped together beneath the parasol, sharing the little circle of shadow it was casting down onto the moderately sun-drenched beach. Fascinated by the strange sight, the old fisherman had forgotten all about his business for a moment and heard, as though in the distance, "Cinque coccomere, por favore." His surprise at the strange family beneath the blue and white parasol was compounded by his surprise at this enormous order, and was given yet another boost at the sight of the customer's good-natured smile. It belonged to a thin, utterly chalk-white man dressed in a loose linen suit and bizarre sun hat with a bright yellow Pikachu on it. Despite the strange pronunciation, his order had been perfectly clear, if somewhat absurd. "Cinque?" the old fisherman exclaimed. "Cinque." The chalk-white man nodded, taking the watermelons and staggering like a drunk tightrope walker along the beach, clutching them in his arms. One by one, they dropped down into the sand by the parasol, like enormous seeds being planted by a giant. The chalk-white man practically threw himself into the shade, as though he had been wandering lost in a radioactive area and finally come across a protective safe zone. The old fisherman wondered for a moment how 5 watermelons could be divided between 7 people. Then he asked himself the inevitable question: why travel to Italy, to the Tuscan coast, to Maremma, to Castiglione della Pescaia, if you couldn't bear the sun? Not even Arto Söderstedt knew quite what to say to that. Beauty wasn't really a satisfactory answer for taking 5 children out of school during an important few weeks in spring. Peace wasn't quite enough of a reason for 2 adults to take months off from their jobs in the public sector either, particularly when, as with his wife, Anya, you were a tax inspector and the self-assessments had just come flooding in. So, of course, his conscience was there, picking holes in both the beauty and peace arguments. The only thing his conscience hadn't reached was his own situation. Arto Söderstedt didn't feel the slightest bit guilty at having temporarily left the police corps. The A Unit, or the National Criminal Investigation Department's Special Unit for Violent Crimes of an International Nature, had certainly been busy over the past year. But since the Sickla slaughter case had reached its peculiar conclusion, the big, all-consuming cases had been noticeable in their absence. They had come extremely close to a disaster of huge international proportions during the Sickla case, but that was almost a year ago now, and time does have a tendency to heal old wounds. And so, when the money came pouring in, like manna from heaven, Arto Söderstedt didn't hesitate for a second. Besides, he also felt burnt out, without quite understanding what that meant. Everyone was burnt out nowadays, everyone but him, mainly because he had never quite understood the meaning of it. He had probably been burnt out for years without having been any the wiser. It was his turn now.